My king, I've come to give tidings on the current geopolitical situation in East Europe. Before I get to that, I first have to give you historical context and then move forward with what's actually going on, which many of these facts may surprise you. So let us begin. June 5th, 2023. 1. In the year 1914, the Blessed Virgin appeared in the Borderlands and gave them a cautionary warning that the great nation in the north would become a godless nation and would spread suffering for 80 years. 2. In 1917, the autocracy of the great northern nation was usurped by an evil and wicked man, and so the nation had become godless. And years of great trial began for much of the world. 3. This godless nation had rearranged the borders of this territory, thereby allotting to it land that originally did not belong to it. 4. During the Second Global Conflict, another angered empire temporarily took hold of much of the European continent and came upon the attack against this great godless nation. It had seized much of the territories, especially those in the borderlands. And because of this, well, I'll tell you the next number. Number 5, that hold did not last long, but this angered nation left behind sympathizers for the angered nation's policies. 6. In 1954 and 1955, the Blessed Virgin appeared with a startling but little-known revelation that happened in the territory of Seredny, over on the west side of the borderlands. This revelation included the fate of the Pope and the Roman Church. In 1987, the Virgin reappeared where she did in 1914 in Khrushchev. She warned that though the territorial dispute was about to end and they would have peace for a while, Chernobyl, the disaster that took place there, should serve as a warning to the world. Also, she said that more suffering was to come for this nation, and that this great godless nation would be converted, but that many people would be martyred in the borderlands as a result of that. 8. In the time of the current altered incarnation of the borderlands, geopolitics has always been unsteady, but started getting even more unsteady in the areas that were more dominated by people who weren't actually from the borderlands. 9. The false lady of the nations began her rallying cry for a new world order, which would upset the law everywhere and upset the borders of all current nation states, etc. The great nation in the north had a problem with this. 10. Every nation took to lavish spending, chasing one rainbow after the next. This caused massive debts everywhere. 11. The great nation of the north had ruptured and taken on the disordered parliamentary politics of the Western Hemisphere. 12. Though that nation was no longer outlawing worship, the damage was done. Now they had to make sense of their pain. 13. The false, let's call her a beast, the beast of the nations, led by the so-called Torch of Liberty, began to interfere with the Borderlands and their politics. As such, policies in these eastern territories started to reflect those of that great beast, and sovereignty was being eroded. 14. Tensions resurrected between East and West for opposite reasons. For the East, having their soil tilled by the great terrors of the Red State, were beginning to become more spiritual, while the West was losing its soul. 15. In 2014, tensions re-erupted in the eastern region of the Borderlands because of denizens or displaced patriots from another nation which dominated the region. 16. We go back to 1953. It was warned a powerful peoples from the east would arise and come and punish the west, and that this chastisement would belong to God. And this is very similar to what the king Nebuchadnezzar had done to the Jews right before their first exile. This was revealed by an apparition called Our Lady of Revelation to an Italian would-be mystic convert to the faith, which happened at Tre Fontane in Italy. 17. This new Nebuchadnezzar had gained great influence with his political savvy and had become a favorite leader in his respective country, where his rhetoric of sovereignty resonated powerfully within the people, not only of his own nation, but with many outside of his nation, because they desired also national sovereignty away from this great beast of the nations. 18. However, as with the first Nebuchadnezzar, he will become maddened with megalomania, the same as the great beast of the nations is also maddened. 19. In 2022 began the imminent conflict as spoken of in 1987, where this nation would attack the borderlands and cause many to become martyred, which I suppose in the end might be a good thing, as this nation will eventually be converted. 20. Our Lady instructed a seer in Tuy, Spain, 1929-1931, to have the Holy Father and all of his bishops in the world consecrate this nation to the Immaculate Heart of the Blessed Mother Mary. This consecration had never properly been completed, however. 21. Our Lady instructed the Pope of 1960 to reveal a secret to the world. It is now widely believed that that secret was not shared because they saw and they read that a certain nation, the great nation, would come and chastise them. Very similar to Jeremiah's warnings to Israel. 22. As usual with man's fall and chastisement, the prophets were not listened to, not heeded, and so God was ignored. So was Our Lady. 23. As with the example of Nebuchadnezzar, the reigning king of Israel at the time had conspired with the Egyptians to try to fight Nebuchadnezzar, but the Egyptians abandoned them, and eventually they fell and were exiled. Chastisement is imminent without penance, so consider this Jonah's warning. And this is all, my king. We must all do penance.